Hi there. Hi. My name's Elizabeth Hunter. I work for UW-Medicine. That's part of University of Washington, the medical side. And we are here to talk about data and analytics with social media. At this point, I think we all know how to spread the word via social media. You send out a tweet or you post on Facebook. The hard part for a lot of organizations and companies is figuring out what to do once we've sent out the message. So our panelists are going to talk with you about their work with the tools that they use, what they use to listen to for social media, and then how they analyze the social properties to best engage with their tweeters or influencers or fans. So basically, analytics isn't just about seeing the numbers. You can go to any free website and kind of see how many fans you have on Facebook and maybe how many fans they have or how many tweets you send out a day. But really using these figures to maximize interaction with the people who are paying attention to you, turning them into, in our case, patients or attendees for an event or donors, of course. So without further ado, let's have the panel introduce themselves.
Hi, my name's John Hickey. I'm the social media and community manager at Wizards of the Coast. So I lead our social media team that covers Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, and Kaijudo.
Hi, I'm Helen Sornetz. I work at Seattle Children's, and I'm the director of annual giving there. I work with our social media team to do a number of campaigns, and so I'm armed with a lot of information from that team to help you today.
I'm Elise Paracchio Daniel. I work for the University of Washington in the central marketing department, so I oversee the main social media properties for the university.
Hi everybody, my name is Doug Turner. I'm principal with Mantis Technology Group. We're a local company that, among other things, develops analytics and platforms for folks to help measure and understand what social means to their business.
Okay. So let's just establish some understanding. I'm going to ask each of the panelists what properties, and by properties I mean social media outlets, that they manage specifically. John?
We're on the big ones, Facebook and Twitter for sure. It depends on which brand we're looking at. Right now we're also on Pinterest with Magic and D&D because there are people actually interested in that stuff on Pinterest. We're experimenting with things like Instagram and Vine. Yeah, we're just trying all sorts of different platforms.
So Seattle Children's is on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Google, and just recently doing some work in Pinterest. So,
Same old story over here. So these are sort of in order of importance in terms of the amount of investment of time we put out there. So Facebook is the big dog for us. The big dog. Twitter, LinkedIn, we have a company page on LinkedIn. Google Plus is starting to be interesting to us, especially because of how it influences search results. So that's why we're on that property. And then Pinterest and Instagram. We do have a YouTube channel. I do not manage that. So.
You forgot the woof.
I'll work that in at some point.
So for us, because we develop a platform that helps other people listen, we try to cover as much as we can. We have a very, very broad range. One of the things I thought I would add here, though, is what you're hearing is a very different, or some common, some difference in terms of which platforms are different to which people. And we find that a lot when we work with companies that Twitter will be the #1 platform for a lot of companies, but Facebook can rise up in different industries because the nature of their communication with their constituents is just better suited to Facebook. One very interesting phenomenon that we are seeing is Instagram is one of the fastest growing. It is outstripping from a growth percentage perspective even its parent Facebook. So in some cases, Instagram is becoming more important to people than Facebook. So.
And Tumblr is on my radar. Haven't actually made that happen yet. So.
Keep an eye out for it. So now that we know what the properties they manage are, I'd like to have them kind of go through and talk about what the most important metrics for those properties are. For example, a metric for Facebook would be reach. You'd find that through your insights page. A metric for Fundraising would be number of donations associated with a certain social media push. So maybe let's do what the most important properties are and what their most important metrics are to you.
Sure. For us, across the board, Facebook is the most important. I mean, Magic at the Gathering right now, we have about 725,000 fans there. Twitter, we're at 30, 35,000. So Facebook is huge for us. It's the audience we want to talk to the most. And when I'm looking at important metrics, I want to see people doing things. I'm not very interested in reach, honestly. I feel like it's a very passive metric, and it's not telling me the most important thing, which is people taking action and being social in that space. So on Facebook, talking about this is a really important metric to us. On Twitter, the number of times people are using a certain hashtag we want them to use. Mentions are also important, but we try to drive hashtag usage there.
So Seattle Children's two most important properties are Facebook and Twitter. I'd probably say Facebook is our most important property. Our social media manager is going to make me say that what we measure depends on the action we're trying to get people to take. So very similar to what you just heard, but it was very, I think for me, because most of the time when I'm tuned into social media, it's related to philanthropy. I'm looking at both the dollars and then the engagement. So the substantive posts that are specific to that Facebook, or the substantive retweets that are happening that really show engagement. And I hone in on those and I say, okay, we had this number of them for this type of post and those kinds of things.
So as sort of a lead into talking about what metrics I focus most on is to just kind of say what our biggest priorities are in terms of our purpose for being on these platforms. And one of them is to build and reinforce pride among especially our alumni base, but certainly also our current student population and faculty staff. Because in a time of budget cuts, it can be sort of demoralizing, and yet it's such a great, strong institution with a global presence. It's good to remind people of why they love being attached to the university. So, and then also we're interested in influencing perceptions. There are a lot of pieces of information that are misinterpreted by the public. For example, how many in-state versus out-of-state students we admit, and so on. Just like with John, the most important metric to me is what Facebook calls talking about us, or talking about this, and because that tells me people are engaging with the content, they're liking it, commenting on it, and sharing it with their friends, because that increases our reach. And reach is one that we all kind of roll our eyes at right now, we who manage Facebook pages, because Facebook is always behind the scenes, tinkering and driving us crazy, so that the reach numbers are all over the map. And right now, I think if you ask any of us, I think Facebook is trying to get us to pay to have our posts more prominently visible. And so they're tanking our reach numbers. They will deny this till their dying day, but this is my suspicion.
Working it out.
Yeah. You'll often hear panels like us say that, I hope this isn't driving you crazy. Oops. I'm driving myself crazy. That follower numbers and fan numbers don't matter, but they still matter to me for two reasons. One, I'm still educating my boss about the fact that that's not the only metric. He wants us to be bigger than all the other Pac-12 schools and so on. But also, we don't have what I feel to be the full capacity of our alumni base by any means. Like our Facebook following is at about 197,000, which is a great number, but we've got room for growth for sure. So I pay attention to our growth trajectory and what causes spikes and doesn't. And then it's kind of a nice lead into what Doug does. We do pay attention to volume of conversation about us, what topics are being talked about in the social sphere that have to do with us, and what is the nature of those conversations. Is it positive, negative, or neutral? But I can't do that without this guy over here.
So Doug is going to give a brief demonstration of what his company does, and it's a social listening, basically software, and he's going to give us a good idea of how you can get data from social media that can actually drive your goals.
Thanks. So one of the comments that I really liked that I heard from Helen is the question of what metrics matter kind of depends. And one of the things that we would espouse very strongly is measuring. While I do this, I'm going to log in. So this is our platform. It's called Pulse Analytics. It's a cloud-based system. So you simply come to a website and you go in as a user and you log in. I'm co-opting John's goodwill here for a few minutes. We've done a quick collection on data around Wizards of the Coast and the various properties that they manage to just help illustrate a couple of points. But what I mean is that what you measure is dependent on your business and it's dependent on your objective, right? The metric that you care most about depends on what do you do for a living? What's your goal in using social? If your goal is, as Elise said, to drive the number of followers or likes, then great. That becomes your metric, and what you do to do that becomes the baseline that you want to measure. If your goal is to increase funding, to increase gifts, well, great. What action are you going to take, and how do you want to either deliver the message through social or use social as the thermometer or the barometer of the effectiveness of what it is that you're doing? So really, it's not one single answer as to what the most important metric is. So I'll just give a very, very brief kind of flyby overview of the kinds of things that are possible with a platform that helps listen and interpret what it is that people are doing and saying across social platforms. So from here, we get a very quick synopsis. You know, one of the things that we encourage people to do is to take a look at social not as a snapshot just today, but over a trend line, right? Over the basis of a period of time, and to incorporate what else you happen to be doing. If you're doing a marketing campaign, if you're doing having a specific event, you want to see what happened before, during, and after, right? So that trending timeline is important. So here you can see, for example, number of conversations, or what we call documents, on a day-to-day basis, and we'll compare one month to the next. You can get sentiment. Sentiment is dangerous because there tends to be a lot of neutrality in the noise side of the conversation, right? People yammering about all kinds of stuff while they're then talking about you. So, but one of the things that a good platform will do, and Elise hit on this, is that if I go from that general purpose view to something that is a little bit more specific, sorry. I just want to switch my timeline to current year to date. You can see in here, for example, that what we're looking at is all of the conversations by day measured by sentiment by platform. So we're looking at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And so this is a good example of what I talked about, is in this particular case, as John said, Facebook's their most important platform. Ta-da, right? The numbers speak for themselves, okay? But what you also see is you see an immense amount of noise. All of this blue is neutral. And what does neutral mean? It probably just means somebody's just passing on a comment from somebody else, or they're just commenting that they went to the store and saw something, right? In order to get down to meaning in the data, what we have the ability to do, and what you should be looking for, is to isolate the conversations based on what it is people are talking about. So in this particular case now, we see that what I've done is that I've isolated all the conversations and are just looking at ones that talk about the cards associated with the games, people that think it's fun, people that have problems or issues, who's retweeting about it, maybe some customer support issues. And all of a sudden now, the amount of neutrality comes down, and now you can get into some real positive and negative discussion about what's happening, okay? So, and ultimately, yeah, what you want to get to is you want to get to the ability to actually go in and isolate issues and problems. So looking at this, sorry, trying to scroll, right? Get down to individual problems that people are having with performance on the site, or customer service issues, or what have you. So, the idea of what the metrics are, again, the data is available all across the board in terms of number of conversations, number of followers, number of likes. It's a matter of how you take that data and relate it to what it is that you're trying to measure in your business.
So now that you've seen a little bit of what our panelists look at daily, weekly,
Hourly.
hourly,
Yeah, it depends on what's going on.
and some of the, for example, comments you can see at the bottom, these are things that John has to deal with, sometimes immediately, and sometimes over a period of time, he'll notice some trend, a certain card that they put out that people are liking or not liking. So I'd love for them to share with you, for example, if you notice a trend or something going on in the sentiment or conversation, how would you convert that sentiment into action? So basically, this is the ROI question. This is the return on investment. Your investment is you put the message out, you are looking at the analytics, and you're figuring out what's coming from this and how you go about developing a tactic or a strategy from this.
Yeah, so we were talking earlier at the couch kind of around content strategy as well. I think this fits pretty well there. One thing that we've noticed with our brands is that we have very different communities on each platform. So our Facebook community is very different than our Twitter community, which is very different than our Google Plus community. So Dungeons & Dragons right now is going through a big change. We're releasing a new rule set, and that's a really big thing for our community. They're very engaged in the game, so when we change things, it's a big deal. Well, we started talking about this a lot on Facebook, and what we found is people were just kind of angry all the time. Like, no one was happy, and there's a lot of bickering. When we talk about it on Twitter, it was a little more back and forth, and on Google Plus, people had these amazing, great conversations that went in depth and were very positive and constructive. So, taking a lot of this look at sentiment, we've changed what we do on Facebook. We don't talk about this that much. We post fun pictures that are like troll versus ogre, who wins? And everyone's happy, and they're like troll, ogre, and it's all fun. And we don't get into that meat of this new rule set because that Facebook community just gets angry and they're full of hate. It's not fun to start a Monday with that.
very hard.
Yes, but if we can have everyone really excited and happy about trolls and ogres, which is really the heart of D&D anyway, so we're still achieving that, right? We're talking about that. Then that's what we're going to start focusing on. So we can use the sentiment analysis. We can use our engagement metrics to see what types of content on each platform people are engaging in, and really focus in on that and hone in on that to try to just get people talking about our brand in positive ways.
So I am one party removed from the actual management of day-to-day for our social media platforms, but what happens a lot is that my social media manager, or the social media manager at Seattle Children's will, I'll get an email from her that has a little urgent thing on it that says, this post happened and I need information now. And so there's a lot of responsiveness that I do sort of through her on specific issues that have meaning for our philanthropy community or are related to giving or make a difference for our donors. And so she's very responsive to anything that people are asking about. The other thing that I think that our social media team has done really well is that as things pick up interest, they're very responsive to altering content, very similar to what you were saying, to be able to say, if there's a negative trend in sentiment, we can offer content that is, towards the positive. Within a week, we can have posts up on different blog properties that we have and link to those and sort of build that conversation. Within a few days, we can, have more robust content or more information out there. Within a few hours, we can direct people to, from the community to individual resources in our walls and say, you need to talk to this person to understand what's going on with that better or to help you navigate our systems better. So we do a lot of that.
Louise?
Got all kinds of thoughts that I have now listening to what you guys are saying, but when I am seeing something that's a negative sentiment, I'm more likely to act quickly, whereas if I'm seeing something positive, I'm going to be more deliberate. And mapping out some tactics and strategies based on, hey, people liked this thing, what more can we do that's along those lines? So an example of something sort of negative we had come up a couple weeks ago was, there's some people starting to kick up a fuss about the university's investments in fossil fuels. We have a very, proud connection to environmental sustainability, so it's not surprising to see people getting kind of worked up about this. And so the only thing I really did with that at this point is to alert our spokesperson for the university, just so that it wouldn't come out of the blue for him, because it wasn't in the media yet, but I wanted him to know, this is sort of the nature of it. It's a pretty small percentage, but just advising you. And then with positive stuff, this is informing some of the tactics I'm doing going forward. So I want people to feel like they own our properties just as much as I do. And so we've had a lot of good traction with people being able to post photographs either of themselves or how they look at the university. We did a great contest back in June in which we needed to replace the street banners that we had hanging around the university. And we have no money, so we decided we needed to crowdsource some photos rather than send an art director out to do it. And we got hundreds of submissions because we said, tell us what the university looks like to you. So that told us, give people more of those opportunities. So in March, the cherry blossom trees on our campus are gonna start blooming, and that is gold for us. I mean, there's nothing that gets more positive sentiment than that, pretty much, that's related to our university. So I'm formulating a photo contest around that. John was talking about how on Facebook, fun is good, and we see that, but that's not exclusively what I use that platform for. I'm not afraid to let people use it, and I'm not saying you are, but to use it as an opportunity to have a reasoned debate with each other. I think one thing that might be a difference between my properties and his is that we're a university, people are college educated and want to look college educated to each other, and so they're trying to have more kind of rational debates with each other, except when it comes to football. That's a whole other thing. But even with that, like, I will post whether we win or lose, because I want people to feel like they have a place they can trust to come and commiserate or brag or whatever. Yeah, celebrate. So those are some of the kind of thoughts that I jotted down.
I think it's appropriate. We have a lot of healthcare interest up on the panel here. My view on ROI around social kind of starts with the first do no harm concept, right? That it really should be a first priority if you kind of crawl before you run approach is look for the bad things first, right? It's easier sometimes to stop something bad from happening than it is to look for those nuggets of good that you can then go duplicate. A funny story I told earlier, we were sitting in the room with a large consumer products good that produces alcoholic beverages that are consumed a lot in the United States, multi-brand company based out of St. Louis. And we had been monitoring for a period of time, and we were kind of walking in to show what we found. And we have this trick where we can very easily show what's going viral by simply looking at retweets, right? Volumes of retweets. Regardless of who sent it, regardless of what the topic is, we go and we look for spikes on a certain day. And there was a spike of about 400 retweets 2 weeks before we got there. And we opened it, and it was all around somebody organizing a boycott of their brands. And one of the PR people in the room literally got up and walked out and ran to their desk because they hadn't seen it, right? So, as I said, lots of opportunity to use social from finding the positive nuggets, finding the messages that you're sending that have the influence that you're looking for. It's a great listening platform to understand what people are saying based on the things that you're doing. But if you're looking for a baby step, just listen and avoid the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Just quickly, if you don't mind me jumping back in. I think it's also important when you do decide to take action, like if there's a lot of negative stuff going on, that you do it the right way. You can learn from, I think it was Applebee's recently.
Yeah.
You can look that up, Google it, it was bad. One thing we do at Wizards is we have certain people within the company that are the faces for our company in a way, and they talk very well to certain audiences because they design the game and people trust them. So if there is something going bad and we need to make a statement and talk about it, we don't always just do it through the Magic Twitter handle or the D&D one. We try to figure out what the best way to communicate that message is, and I encourage everyone to do that as well. I know this isn't super data-driven right here, but like, don't just look and see something's negative and say, oh, we have to respond now, and just do a Facebook post. Like, try to think through what the best way to respond to that is to curtail it.
Well, I was going to ask if you had been able to thwart any crises, but it sounds like all of you have had experience listening in and hearing something. But I do think, actually, we're probably just about time. I want to have you guys provide, if there are any, initial resources or even websites that you keep coming back to that give a good idea about how to use your metrics and analytics, and specifically good ideas that you kind of take away and say, I didn't even think of that. I'm going to try and employ that. So, John, do you have any websites for anyone?
I'm first, so I get Mashable then?
Kind of get it. I was going to offer Mashable, but it's always the first one everyone says.
Yeah.
Mashable's good. I think they're kind of, sometimes they just pump out as much as they can just because that's what they
Indeed,
do
right.
and whatnot. I actually have I don't know if many people have Flipboard on their iPads or Android devices, but I just have a topic for social and technology, so I read stuff from all over the place. It brings in all the news for me. So I wouldn't say I have one place I go, but I use an aggregate on Flipboard.
I'm a little old school, so I tend to be an anecdotal learner, and so it's conferences like these, webinars that I attend, those kinds of things where I really pick up nuggets where I realize, oh, they've had success there, or yeah, I don't ever want to have to make that mistake for myself, and then incorporate that into my strategies. So I don't know, I look for experts and then listen to them.
In addition to Mashable, there's a website called HubSpot. They sell products, but they put really great information out there. Some of it's about social, some of it is about email marketing. I've learned some great stuff from them. They actually do the science of various topics where they'll do a deep dive into the numbers behind certain activities and draw useful conclusions for the rest of us. So another site is called Marketing Sherpa. Similarly, they do a lot of case studies and research about what is and isn't working in the social space and the email space. They have a little bit of a for-profit bent, but not exclusive. And I've gotten in the habit of sort of translating some of this for-profit stuff for myself, because that's a lot of what's out there. And then there's for you university folks, I've actually liked what Academic Impressions has done in terms of webinars and, in some cases, content. They do some good stuff. So that's just a handful that I go to pretty regularly.
www.mantis. Sorry, I'm kidding.
You're a bad person.
I didn't finish it. No. It's interesting. The amount of data and information that you can glean, I think, is really subject to your imagination. As odd as it sounds, the site that I visit most from a research perspective is Google. If you ask interesting questions either of Google or of search.twitter.com or it's just, there's a lot of people who will aggregate information for you, but just, even when I go to LinkedIn, if I'm learning to ask interesting questions of the data, right? And so yeah, I spend a lot of time just doing very creative searches on Google. I spend time on LinkedIn doing that. I spend a lot of time doing interesting searches of Twitter as well. There's a very advanced Twitter search capability that if you're experimenting, thinking, geez, how do I get a hashtag that'll work for me? Or how do I, is anybody else talking about this thing? Can I build on somebody else's momentum? There's just great sources for you. Just the basic platforms themselves if you ask the right questions. So.
I have something really crazy, which is an actual book. It's printed that I really like. Of course, the author is escaping me, but it's bright red and you can't miss it, and it's kind of known to be tried and true, and it's called Content Strategy for the Web. And it doesn't necessarily address only social media analytics, but it really gives this entire perspective on how you can think about what content you put out that's best for your organization. And that should, of course, be influenced and driven by analytics and social.
That's a good book.
It's a great book. So I can open it up to you now if we have questions. I'm sure there's got to be some. Sure.
How do you handle social media sites that aren't necessarily under your control, like sites like Reddit, where someone might just post about you? Do you monitor them? Do you do analytics on that?
At Wizards, we don't do a ton of analytics, except maybe seeing like how many people have voted or how many comments we get. But we will jump in on occasion to Reddit. We do AMAs as well, so we use the platform. It's an interesting site. Like we don't go in and see a ton of content. We do on occasion, but we don't use it like we would something like Facebook. We just keep a close eye on it and jump in when we need to.
I definitely use it to listen with and then to inform some of what we talk about on the properties we do control. So I don't think I've ever jumped in yet. Probably should, but yeah, it's more kind of a good barometer for me of what people care about that they might not tell us directly.
I can only say that I think that our social media team does a lot of monitoring across the web about where our Seattle Children's brand is mentioned, and our PR team does as well. And so as we see in any platform mentions or names or things go, there's investigation and then decisions about what happens next in terms of if we let it go, which is, oftentimes that's just what you do, but, there's a need to see what's being said about us out there because reputation is so important to
Yeah, and
our
it gets
brand.
incorporated into other strategies of ours. We try to kind of have a holistic look at how we communicate externally, so it could inform other things that we're doing also.
It's a great place to find memes. So, like,
That's true.
if someone will post something really hilarious with Magic or D&D involved, we might share it out on Twitter and Facebook as well.
Yeah, and people love that.
Yeah.
They like getting the credit.
Yeah, they do.
Questions? That was a good one.
Yeah.
In the back.
Let's hear it.
I'm actually curious how your online social strategies connect with your other kind of offline marketing and measurements. Like I know Helen does fundraising, John's ultimately trying to sell more games, and Elise is trying to drive pride. So I'm curious as how all of that sort of connects. And if you use offline data with your online data.
Yeah, so that's something that we're getting better at. Like we're not quite there yet at Wizards, but one thing that we're working on is kind of creating a dashboard where you can see a lot of these numbers all in one spot and see how they connect. So if you see a spike in an important metric, like for example, Magic is an interesting property. We're primarily a card game where people play at home, and we lose track of how much people are playing. We can't measure all that stuff online like you would with World of Warcraft or something. So what we try to do is get people to go into their local hobby store and play there in a program we call Friday Night Magic. It's an awesome program. It's been very successful. So that's kind of one of our key measurement tools is to see how many people go to Friday Night Magic because we do record how many people play there. So once we have kind of this dashboard, we can see, if we get a spike in Friday Night Magic play, what did we do elsewhere that may have helped drive that? So if we did a social push that week, then we can learn from that and say, okay, this had a lot of value to it. Let's keep doing more things like that. So it's really important that we're connecting all the dots between digital and what's happening in stores, because there's not a divide anymore. This is all integrated. So we need to be looking at that.
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Helen.
No, that's all right. I was just thinking about a strategy that we're employing around that will integrate we're taking steps to integrate what we're doing in our direct mail communications and having an overlay with our social media presence. So this spring, we'll be sending out a letter that features a child's story, and we generally share those stories with our colleagues in our marketing communications and our social media team, and they save them up kind of for the end of the year when we do our big holiday give now, cute kids kind of stuff. But this time around, this spring, we're going to do a summary post of one of the lead pictures of the child and some information about her and a link to give to our main webpage, and we'll just see what that does, because we haven't had a lot of integration around what's going on right now in our offline direct mail world and what we're going to do in our social media presence.
So is the hope that people would, for example, open this direct mail or see this piece of paper and it would, they would recognize that child online when they go on?
Theoretically, I think it's probably going to be a little bit more the reverse. So we know when the mail is going to arrive in households, and towards the tail end of that is when we're going to post up the photo and the piece. So it should, in theory, say, right, I wanted to do that thing online at my desk back home. Why don't I just do this here while I'm at the office, make my gift now?
Right.
Theoretically, we'll see.
Right.
So one of the things I was going to say is, and I tried to hit on it earlier, that I would encourage people to think of social as one element of a strategy. The reality is you're running your organizations before social existed, right? The metrics that you use to measure success in whatever it is you're trying to do still exist. Social is a way to augment that. You can either use it to augment the messaging around the program that you're doing, or you can use it as a barometer of measuring the successfulness of what it is that you're doing, or you can do both. And then one of the things that we always work with is trying to understand a basic scientific method of measure a baseline, do something, and then measure afterwards and see if there's correlation, see if there was impact. And so we almost never look just at the number of likes, the number of conversations, the percentage of positive, the percentage of neutral. We always try to look at them relative to what else was going on. Hey, we ran these campaigns. Is there any correlation between the social conversation that happened before, during, or after the conversations? Give you a simple example. If you were an e-commerce site that drove sales of your product and revenue is directly associated with people going to your website, and you think that a social campaign is going to increase revenue for your company, but you're not sure whether Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook is the right platform, then do a campaign on Twitter, do a campaign on Facebook, do a campaign on YouTube, and then measure the correlation between volume of conversation in Twitter and your Google Analytics on your website. Because you've already determined that people coming to your website is what drives revenue, because you're an e-commerce site. And measure whether Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube has a greater correlation to driving the behavior that you want, in this case, going to your website, and then do more of that and less of the one that doesn't work so well, right? So that's the thinking that we encourage to do, is don't just think about social as like, hey, we got a whole bunch of likes. Okay, what were you trying to measure? What are you trying to do, right? Does it correlate? So.
And to take that to the next level, once you figure out maybe Facebook's your best platform, make sure you're using trackable links,
right,
like Owly links or Bitly links, because then you can even start drilling down on what type of content, what type of promotions you're doing, actually get those conversions that you want.
Yep.
So you can keep refining. And I think that's the key with anything you're doing on social, is just to keep learning and always be improving and always cutting out stuff that's not working and keep hammering the stuff that's working for you and tracking all of it.
That's the important message. Do not walk into social and social listening and measuring thinking, as soon as I get my dashboard, all of my questions are going to be answered. No, as soon as you get your dashboard, as soon as you get some data, now you have something you can dive into and tear apart and start to understand, right? I was drawing the analogy earlier that imagine 20 years ago, somebody having a conversation with you and they were saying, okay, here's what you're gonna, every company in the world is now gonna have to start counting the number of people that come to their website and the number of pages that everybody goes to when they're on their website and the average amount of time that people spend on your website. 20, 25 years ago, it would be like, there's no ROI in that. Why would I do that? Well, today, you can't really run a business that has an online presence without, that's bread and butter. That is basic fundamental blocking and tackling, to borrow a football analogy, right? And social listening, you're not going to have a choice. That's just, it's where it's going to go, and your ability to understand those conversations is going to be as basic and simple as counting the number of times people come to your website.
Is there anything, because I've been to conferences like this before and I've written lots of notes and then gone back and been like, what does that mean? So I just wanted to make sure if there were any terms that any of us used or abbreviations or acronyms that maybe you didn't know what they were so we could explain a little further, or we all know. Awesome.
Good, we weren't speaking Greek.
I know.
Or maybe we were, but they're all Greek.
That could very much, yeah,
I hate
multilingual.
buzzwords, so if I was using buzzwords, call me out, that's fine.
And are there any more questions? I think we have about a minute left.
I can talk about, since I didn't bust in and answer that question, we're such a behemoth that it's very hard to get all our different properties aligned, especially our website. If you go to washington.edu and get very far below the homepage, things just go, the purple disappears, and maybe people have University of Washington on there, maybe they don't. But what we do try to do is kind of what Doug was talking about. If we have a campaign, to kind of deploy all the tactics in tandem and be able to measure what was it like before, what was it like during, and did we gain any ground after. And one thing we've been able to prove is if you want a message to be sustained, you have to have a sustained marketing campaign, which means you need to give us some money. That hasn't really worked yet, but one of the campaigns that we did was around this program called Husky Promise, and it's a program that allows low-income students to be able to attend the University of Washington tuition and fee-free, Washington State students. And so we did surveys of Washington voter public. We did ad campaigns on TV and all the other platforms. We also sent our students out to Eastern Washington and places that oftentimes where people aren't thinking of us as if this is even an option for them. So we had sort of in-person, online. I think we did some email campaigns as well. We didn't really have much of a social presence at that time, but we just saw a wonderful spike in awareness of what that program was, and that was huge for us because it's this great opportunity that not enough people knew about.
So I actually have one more question that I've been wondering about. We have a very nascent program going at my organization, and something that I think analytics is great for is identifying specific influencers. So John, you mentioned that you have people within the company, but have you ever come across someone who just, you almost wanted to hire them because they were sending your message out so well? And you found them because you were analyzing the conversations?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, we haven't been using super advanced tools or even things like Clout. I'm not really big on Clout or anything, but just monitoring. Twitter is really the main place we found people like that. I think one important thing is making sure you're using hashtags consistently and making them important for your community, because then the important people in your community will start using those hashtags. And from there, we can follow those conversations, as well as keyword searches, and find those people that actually do matter. Sometimes you also get lucky and you have a football player from the Minnesota Vikings talk about your brand. And you need to catch those things and build those relationships with them very quickly, and we were able to do that, which is pretty fun. But yeah, it's really important to find those influencers and get them on your side and build relationships with them.
Helen, you had mentioned that you had an experience with a football player too in your
Yes.
hospital that was directly tied.
Yeah, so this holiday season, during our holiday campaign, we had the honor and privilege of having Russell Wilson in our hospital. He actually comes and visits the kids on a pretty regular basis. He's a football player for the Seattle Seahawks, one of the rookie quarterbacks, and he tweets out pictures of himself with the kids, so he's already got a presence with us, and we talked about our campaign, and he was like, sure, I'll tweet that out, and did a little retweet of our campaign, and bam, huge spike. Suddenly everyone's aware, there's lots of views and awareness, and there's more donations during that time period as well when we're seeing that spike. So that made us really realize that when we're trying to convert sort of sentiment into action around having people make donations, that we really need to leverage other people that they trust, and use their reach in addition to our own.
And we do have some athletes that are famous, but I want to actually talk about the fans. We have, even though they're sometimes hostile, they are deeply connected to the university in a number of ways, and some of those include as donors. And so I'm on the lookout for those who are saying interesting things and who are kind of even-handed in how they talk about us. So especially on Twitter, when I have an opportunity to give those people some love and visibility, I try to do that. So it kind of legitimizes them as voices about the university, but aren't within the university. So I'm not able to say a name just right off the top of my head, but there's a couple of folks that I keep a watch out for.
Can I just give one solid example?
By all means.
So someone that wasn't a big football player we got lucky with, but someone in the community that we really helped encourage and is kind of taking the torch is someone for our Xbox game for Magic called Duels of the Planeswalkers. We've struggled with really getting fan sites for this game, but it's really important for people learning how to play. And this year we found someone was starting to make a lot of videos online of him playing and talking about it more, and all of a sudden he had a little website. And so we started feeding him exclusive preview content before anyone else knew about the cards, so he can make videos ahead of time and be the first to show the community all this cool stuff. And what we saw was, we had 3 new sets come out, and the first time, he would get 2,000 views on that video, and the community rallied behind him. They were like, yeah, this is awesome. And then the next one came out, and all of a sudden he was at 8,000 or 9,000, and then he's at 20,000. And now we've helped create a fan site where there wasn't really one before, and we can work with him a lot more going forward. And that was we just noticed this guy was on our message boards a lot talking about us and making videos, and now he's a big important part of all of our marketing and communications with our fans.
Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Can you flip to the other screen just for a second? One of the things that you might be interested to know is, so I also grabbed traffic on the topic Drive 2013, so for the conference itself. So obviously you see a little bit back here, maybe you guys were promoting a little bit, but now all of a sudden the big build, this was yesterday. We don't have all of today's data in yet.
Where are your positive comments?
But
Who said something bad?
yeah, who said something bad?
It's the red.
The other fun thing that you can do, and I have a great anecdote on this is we go from being kind of a historic monitor to being a live monitor. So as people are saying stuff now, we will pull them off the kind of the live thing. And I asked earlier amongst my colleagues here who was geotagging their content, because ultimately, don't forget that if you have geotagging turned on your phone, then that means that people can find you. And in this particular case, I can go in and find all the people that are saying stuff about, and there's a funny story here that I was presenting to the Montreal Transit Authority. Oh, somebody's actually off campus here talking about us. So I was presenting to the Montreal Transit Authority, and somebody had tweeted something about them, and I zoomed in and zoomed in and zoomed in and showed them and showed them and showed them, and I got right down to very, very close, and I said, and they're like, they're all leaning in and they're looking in really close and looking. It's like, what did the guy say? Who was it? Was it good or bad? And I said, do you want me to take a picture of him from the satellite? And they said, can you do that? No, I can't.
Not yet.
So anyways, sorry, just
Thank you very much. You've been a great audience.
Thanks, everybody.